Okay, picking up where we left off on page 384, we're talking about virtual memory as the combination of physical RAM and how much storage you've set aside on your hard drive that can be used for paging out physical RAM to disk. The next thing we're going to talk about on page 386 is coordinating the tasks. I mean, can't everything happen on your machine all at once? And the example that I give is kind of funny. Let's say I had two people that were trying to use a printer at the same time. And so I printed my Word document and they printed their Word document. I mean, if there was no control going on, well, you know, the top half of the page might have my document and the second half of the page would have somebody else's document. That'd be kind of crazy, right? So there has to be some way of coordinating all these tasks. And if you look at all the applications that are running, you're going, oh, well, that's not that much. But if you look at all the running processes, the things that are actually happening behind the scenes, oh my goodness, there's a lot of stuff. And so the machine has to be able to go in and coordinate and look at and figure out what the priority is for these tasks. And so it is very much like, you know, queuing up to go to a movie or something. It's, you know, everybody gets in line and it processes those things one at a time. So if you have a limited resource, for example, I have one mouse and one keyboard. So the machine knows that whatever device, I mean, whatever application is in the foreground is going to receive the mouse and the keyboard input. None of the others. So that one's kind of easy. But let's say I'm trying to send music. And so I'm over here and I'm listening to music, a music app, and then I get a ding from my email client. Am I going to be able to hear the ding? Yeah, because the music and the sound from the email arriving overlap each other. And so they overlap, and I hear them both. But when I print, I don't want any overlapping going on. I want them to stand in line. So sometimes it's obvious how task management works. Sometimes it's perfectly okay to have things overlap, and others you got to stand in line. Okay, cool. Let's continue. On page 387, they talk about a device driver. Now, every time the machine you know, fires up, it looks at all these devices and loads little tiny pieces of program that makes those things work. So, for example, this machine has a sound card, and so it has to load a sound driver to make it work. It has a hard drive, so it has to load a hard driver. It has a graphics card, so it has to load a graphics driver. And so every device on your machine has to have a particular driver. And that's why, for example, if I crack open my machine and go replace my graphics card, when I first boot the machine up after I've replaced the graphics card, the machine goes, what the heck is this? Hang on a second. Hey, you need a new driver. And so you stick in the disk and then it'll load the driver. And that's the system called plug and play. And it's designed so that when you have a brand new device in a system, the next time it comes back on, it's going to look at the device ID and then figure out what it is and figure out how to go about getting the drivers installed. So it's designed so that either it'll find the drivers that's already installed in your machine. That's one option. The other option is it'll say prompt you for putting a disk in. That's another one. And of course the third one is go out to the internet and get stuff. Okay, so a driver. It's all about hardware. It's the interface between the operating system and the physical parts of the machine. Okay, so one of the other things that you can do on page 388 is, of course, you want to be able to go in and be able to connect to networks. That's a very common, critical kinds of thing that you can do with a network. So I've got this is a Windows 7 box, and I'm currently connected to a home network, and I'm hitting out to the internet. And you guys have probably seen how this works. I mean, I can hook up a wireless connection. I can hook up all sorts of things. And this little thing, it talks about whether or not it's a home network or not. There's three categories here. And I can go in and tell it that this is I'm at work, or I'm at home, or I'm in the wild, wild west where I just want to connect to the internet but turn off all other things. So if I'm going, for example, to a Starbucks and I'm using their wireless connection, the type of network here is going to be public. So home is the most open. That basically means anybody who's in my home network can do practically anything. Work is sort of like, yeah, okay, but some controls. And then public is, no way, Jose. I'm turning off everything, absolutely everything, so that the only thing that is turned on is the bare bones minimum stuff I need to be able to connect to the internet. All my file sharing is turned off, and all the rest of the shared accounts and everything else. So this is kind of a cool way of making sure that you're safe when you're browsing at someplace like Starbucks. Okay, let's continue. One of the other things that this operating system can do for you is doing what's called a performance monitor. So my machine is acting kind of pokey, and I want to know a little bit about why. And so on page 389, they talk about how you have applications that can actually help you out. Now, I'm running Windows 7, so I've got a performance monitor here. Now, this is my physical memory, and it talks about how much of it is in use, how much of it is kind of in standby mode, which means it has been used recently and it could be used again really quick, and then how much of it is free. Well, I'm currently obviously not doing very much on my machine, so I've got about 50% of my memory. And so here's how much physical memory that's being used. This is every time that the machine has to go out to the hard drive to pick up a chunk of memory, or that system where I tell you about you swap out. This shows the activity and how many swaps it's called hard faults per second. And fault doesn't mean problem. That's not what that means. What that means is it looked for the chunk of memory in the normal places and it couldn't find it, and so then it says, hang on a second, let me go to the hard drive to find it. Okay, cool. So this is some cool stuff. I mean, it can show you how much CPU you're running and how much disk you're running and how much network stuff you're running and just everything in the world that you ever wanted to know about how everything is running. So right now I don't have anything in the red. Everything is kind of green. So I'm just sitting here kind of idling and not having many issues. But this is where you would go if you thought there was a problem going on. Like, my machine's slowing down, what's going on? So you click here and then you find out, well, dang, it's the network. I mean, I'm in the middle of downloading some god-awful photograph via email that somebody sent me, and it's clogging up my pipe coming in the house, and that's why the machine is running slow, is because I'm downloading some huge attachment somebody sent me. Anyway, pretty cool way of looking at it. Let's continue. On page 389, they talk about disk and file utilities. Now, here's the thing that's kind of confusing. Let's say this resource monitor that we're looking at right now, is that a part of the operating system? Well, not really. I mean, it came with the operating system. Okay, it came with it. But it's really just a utility. It's a utility that helps me look at things, okay? The operating system could run just fine without it. The operating system itself, doesn't need this. I might need it, but it doesn't need it. So the real difference between what parts are the operating system and what parts are not, the parts that the operating system needs to do its job, okay, that's the operating system. If it's something that the operating system does not need to do its job, like Notepad, right? Notepad comes with Windows 7. Is that required to make the machine turn on and boot and run? No. Well, then it's not really part of the operating system. It's a utility program. Okay, let's just go through some categories here. The file managers. If you're in the Windows world, it's the plain old Windows Explorer. Doing searching, that's a great thing. You type in a search word and it scans all of your documents on your machine and tells you, if you type in birthday and it goes, whoop, it finds all the times that you mentioned the word birthday in all your documents. Kind of cool. Image viewer, in fact, that's what this is here. This is just a standard image viewer. And so I could just pop through, photographs, images, by just clicking around. Kind of cool. Uninstaller, so I've got some stuff installed on my machine. I really kind of want to make it go away now. Yeah, that makes sense. Disk cleanup. You have to really want to find the disk cleanup. The disk cleanup is buried kind of deep, but it's pretty cool. If I go to the start menu, I go to all programs, and then I go to accessories, and then I go to system tools, and then I go to this thing called disk cleanup. And it is pretty doggone cool. What it'll do, it'll go look at your machine and figure out where all the places where you're consuming an awful lot of disk space that perhaps you don't need to. And so it'll allow you to go in and say, yes, I'd like to delete all those things. And so if you're running out of disk space, the disk cleanup is probably a cool place to go. Now, it's not going to, be a panacea. You're probably going to end up probably having to go get another hard drive anyway. But at least it'll hold off the purchase for a while. So this one's saying that I've got 3 megabytes in temporary internet files, a bunch of, not much, I don't have hardly anything on here. Ooh, that's a couple gig there in temporary files. And so I could just say, go for it, hit the button here. I'm not, but who cares? Let's continue. So, disk defragmenter, on most machines, you have a way of speeding up the access to the hard drive by moving parts of the files around to make them all contiguous. So on a physical disk, you could have files that are physically separated. One of them's over here, one of them's over here. And so every time you read it, the machine has to go, oops, hang on a second, then pop down here, and read. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could move that up to here? And so when it reads the file, it just reads it all in one line. And so that's defragmenting. And once again, it's pretty doggone cool and useful for the traditional style hard drives. Now, we talked about solid state disks before, SSDs, and they don't have a physical arm that moves back and forth, so they don't really have an access time issue. So because there's no issue with access time, there's no penalty for reading over here and then boop, popping down to here. It can read just as fast up here as it could up there. And so there's no need to defragment a solid state disk. And for reasons we won't get into, not only is there no need to, you should not. But we'll worry about that some other day. Okay. Screensavers, file compression, maintenance, backup and restore. Those are all utilities that typically either come with the machine or you buy or download as third-party apps. So I'm using an antivirus that comes with Microsoft. I'm using some other things. So some things I've downloaded, some things I'm using what came with the system. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about automatic updates. On page 390, they talk about how you can set the machine up to go through and automatically update all your stuff. Now, we've talked about this before. I'm going to go to Windows Update, and it says right here, it says you receive updates for Windows and other products from Microsoft. Okay? That's what that means. So, what about my Adobe Acrobat reader? Is that going to show up here? No. So, the Microsoft Update only updates things from Microsoft. It does not update Apple products or Adobe products or all these other guys. And so you really need to have some other utility to help you do that. Okay, let's continue. So on page 391, they talk about hooking your machine up to a network. I'm not necessarily talking about the internet now. We're talking about like our corporate LAN or something like that. So I have got a network here. So if I go up to my good old File Explorer and I scroll down here to the bottom, I can see, for example, I have a network drive. I have a drive E. Now, drive E isn't on this machine. Drive E is mapped to a server. And so, for example, here's some stuff I'm copying back and forth for some classes. Here's some software that I've got, and all sorts of other data that I'm working on, things of that nature. And this is actually a network drive. Now, the operating system, of course, is going to take care of this for me. It makes it look like that this is just a drive letter, just like a physical drive C that I have on my machine. So I physically have a drive C, the hard drive. I physically have a CD-ROM called D. I do not have a drive called E. Not really. It's all just fake. And so the operating system takes care of networking for me, makes it so I don't even have to think about it. Once it's set up and configured, I just close my eyes, and the difference between C, D, and E is not relevant. Cool. This is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.